Hello everyone. Today we will see how we can get the person who submitted the workflow. So let us understand by an example. So let's say if I create here a new purchase requisition. So let me say it as, test 01. So here I am simply creating a purchase requisition. And now let me add a line here. So we'll basically submit the workflow, but we can't directly submit the workflow without the purchase requisition line. Okay, so here let me select a procurement category here. Let's say it as office machine computer. Let me say it as HP laptop here. Let me specify a unit here. So I will go with each. And let me save this. So when this will be saved, then this workflow button will be activated for us. Okay, now this is saved. So now I will click on submit workflow here. So let me click on submit here. Okay, here I will write a comment. Please approve this. I will simply submit. Okay, now you can see the workflow is submitted. So now if you will click on this button here and you go to workflow history, here if you see this particular submitting user, so here Julia is coming because my user is associated with this user. So let me duplicate this tab. So what I mean by this is once I go to my system admin module, user section here. So I'm admin here. When I will open, you see this particular person is associated to my user. So now we'll see by the help of code, how we can grab the, submitted field directly from the code. So for that, I will create a runnable class here. So let me click on add here. Let me go to class section directly. Click on runnable class and I will simply click OK. So we need to follow a concept here. Yeah, so the concept here is basically this information we'll be getting this information from this particular table, workflow tracking table. Now we can't directly get the workflow tracking table first of all because we need to find out the workflow submitted by user from purchase requisition. So first of all we'll target the purchase requisition table. Okay, now this purge requisition table will be connected to our workflow tracking status table. Okay, so by using the rec ID from my purge rec table and by using the context rec ID, I'll be able to get buffer of this table. Then I will use buffer of then I will use this particular index for this particular table. So we'll see by the help of code. So our entry point is purchase requisition here. So for that I will be defining the purge rec table here. Then I will simply define a buffer of my purge rec table. Then I will simply use a method called find purge rec ID. Here I'll be passing my purchase requisition ID. So my purchase requisition ID is nothing, this one. Oh, sorry, I think it should be 56. Let me confirm it here. So this is the correct here. So let me quickly copy it here. Now from here we'll be simply getting the buffer of our purge rec table. Okay, so now we have the buffer of this purge requisition table here. Now we'll target our second table, that is workflow tracking status table, this one. So I will define a buffer of this table, workflow tracking status table here. Okay, now when you will open this particular table, so you see here context rec ID, context table ID, and context company ID. So by help of this field, we'll able to relate these two tables. So how to relate this table? So we'll write here select asterisk from, I will say workflow tracking status. Let me simply copy this. Okay, and then I'll be relating this particular table, workflow tracking status table dot, here we have a field called context rec ID. So this context rec ID will have value of my purge rec table dot rec ID. Additionally, we can use company ID and table ID as well. So let me quickly use table ID as well. So I will simply use this here. So let me copy this one here quickly. Dot context table ID, and I will simply use table num of purge requisition table here. And I will make it small here. Select first only. So now we have the buffer of this particular table with us. Now at the end, we need this particular table as well, that is workflow tracking table. So I will remove this one here. Let me save this. Okay, so now our next table will come into picture, that is workflow tracking table. So let me define buffer of this table, that is workflow tracking table. Now we need to see these two tables are directly related with each other. So if I navigate to its definition here, when I go to relation, so you see the workflow tracking status table rec ID relates with workflow tracking table dot workflow tracking status table field. So I'll use the same concept here. I'll say select asterisk from workflow tracking table. Okay, now we can have multiple records here, so I'll be using this, I'll be shorting this. Created date and time, and we need the latest one here. Also let me short this one with rec ID as well. So here I will write the condition here, where workflow tracking table dot you see we have a field called workflow tracking status table. This will be equals to our workflow status table rec ID. So I will say your workflow tracking status. So I've written something wrong here. Workflow tracking status table dot rec ID. Okay. So now these two table relates, but here we need to apply more conditions here. So for example, workflow tracking table dot, you have something called tracking context. Okay, this should equals to workflow tracking context. So we have this particular EDT here. So since we'll be interested in work item here, so we'll simply sort this with workflow here, and here we need to write one more condition, that is the tracking type either should be submission or submission on behalf. Workflow tracking table dot tracking type. So it's a workflow tracking type. We have this particular EDT, and here you see we'll be using both the EDTs because there could be this particular situation as well. So to cover both of these scenarios, we will simply format this. So here I will write or, and then I will say workflow tracking table dot tracking type. So we are also going to tracks this particular scenario as well. So that's it. Now for query is ready, we need to do formatting, but for now we can ignore this formatting here. So now we only need the user field from here. So I can simply say first only user. Okay, we need the user field only here. So this will, okay, so at the end we want to display it here. So here I forget one interval equals to, so I'll simply do this. Let me save this. Okay, yeah. So now at the end we'll simply display the actual username. So for that I will write my info statement here, then I will use strfmt. So here I will say purchase acquisition number. So here we'll get the purchase acquisition number is submitted, submitted by, here we'll write the name of the user who submitted this. So first of all we need the buffer of a purge table here. So for that I could simply say purge rec table dot purge rec ID, and here we'll be basically using a function here. So the function would be sys workflow helper. I'll be using this particular class here. So there's a function called get dir party from user ID, this one. So here I'll be simply passing the buffer of my workflow tracking table dot user. So I'll close this. and I will close the other two commas as well. So let me trigger a build here. So the build is completed, and if you see here renewable class, so purchase acquisition number is this, and it is submitted by Julia user here. So we get the same information from here as well. So let me click on this button here, and when I go to workflow history, see we have the same as Julia user here. So this is how we can easily find out by the help of code who submitted the workflow. So I will just simply reiterate one more time the code here. So first of all, our entry point was purchase acquisition. We need to find the workflow details for the purchase acquisition. So for that, we simply use this particular purchase acquisition ID, and here we simply get our table buffer. Okay, and then the main information is stored in this workflow tracking table, but these and these tables relates with this rec ID and this workflow tracking status table. Okay, and we can get this particular table information using this context rec ID and context table ID, and it relates with purchase acquisition table rec ID and here table name. And at the end, we simply use this helper class here, and we simply provided the user detail here. So thank you so much for watching this video.